Cool. So we're joined here by Luke Wilson. Thank you very much. You've just come off the panel at Soccerex. How was it, first of all?
Yeah, great. Thank you. It's first time at Soccerex, so yeah, enjoyable to kind of be part of the panel here, and good for us, I think, as a club to have a platform to kind of talk to a broader audience about what we're doing at the club and generally sort of the on field and sort of off field things that we're trying to put in place. So yeah, no, really good day.
So would it be right to talk a little bit about your role at Millwall and yeah, what you get up to?
Yeah, so I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Millwall. I've been there for just under 2 years now. My role is fairly broad. I look after marketing, ticketing, retail, hospitality, and partnership sort of teams. So broadly, it's kind of a strategic top level role in terms of setting the direction for the club in those kind of departments, working with the heads of those departments to do the day to day operation. But looking really at how we, I suppose, drive off-field performance, looking at new revenue streams, looking at how we can kind of commercialise our relationship with our fans, but also really looking at how we can bring that back into fan value. So obviously we want to drive revenue from our relationship with fans and make sure that we're putting that then into what we do as a club on the field. But it's really important also that we're also looking at how we can drive improvements in each of those areas. So give you a couple of examples. We've kind of looked at a whole hospitality refurb, which we're doing at the moment. That's being done with a key partner. So we've looked at a commercial deal there, which is set up to bring more money into the club, but also to bring that in the form of capex expenditure. So actually, effectively investment, really, investment into the facilities to make that fan experience better. And that's actually because of that relationship. That's not actually just within hospitality; it's also within what we'd call retail, so general admission areas. Looking at what we can do in our fan zone, looking at what we can do in the sort of the concourse bars, how we can really take that experience up for all of our fans and make the Den, effectively a better match day experience. It's a great stadium. But it's nearly 30 years old now. So actually, really, it's looking at how can we invest in those different areas? How can we bring in better facilities? So it's two hats in that sense. Always looking at what can we do to improve the fan experience, but what can we do to kind of bring in new revenue streams and kind of support the on-field performance as well. So then that does go into, what new partnerships can we do? What can we do in the licensing sphere? So that was the panel I was just on. We were talking about that. And then really now the two are quite entwined. So actually, when we're working with even licensing partners, they're real club partners. How are we kind of working on new lines, new merchandise, but new verticals? So, one of the things we've done this year is launch a new mobile network. And again, that's a licensing partnership. It's a new product and a new service, but it's about fan experience, it's about fan relationship, it's about driving data. So it ticks lots of different boxes in lots of different verticals, but it's a service provision as well. So, it's as a new revenue stream, but it does also the other elements as well. So there's a lot of scope to the role and a lot of variety. But that's it, in a nutshell.
So you may have just touched upon it, but as a whole, how do you see this season off the pitch in terms of the commercial success for Millwall?
I think it's been a good one. I think we sort of, I suppose when I came in, we started again a little bit afresh. So we wanted to kind of have a new outlook. I think the club's done some really good work in the last 10 to 15 years with trying to move away from probably the traditional stereotypical image of what our club might be, and actually really. Yeah, because of that, actually, a lot of people at the club for a long time have probably had to work twice as hard as maybe people at other clubs to kind of deliver the value and to kind of build relationships and I suppose overcome what that stereotype might be. But actually, all we always say is people come down to the Den, come to a game, and actually your experience of it will be totally different to probably what you think it might be. We've got a really passionate fan base. We've got great, on a match day, the atmosphere is incredible. But that's great and that's there, and nothing happens at the club which doesn't happen at any other EFL club. So it's no different in that respect to anywhere. I think then when we look at what we do off the pitch, what we've tried to do is start again and actually say, look, okay, we've got this great relationship there. We've got really good green shoots. We're a club that's the closest club to the City of London. We've got a really good opportunity as a London-based club to go out and say to national brands and international brands that we can bring you the reach of the EFL. We can do that at a price point which is really competitive. We can deliver all of the media value you need, everything that you'd get from a standard partnership. But what we can actually do as well is be really flexible, be really forward thinking, be really innovative. And those are things that perhaps people don't necessarily associate with Millwall as a club. And that's what we're really trying to do, is have that sort of open-minded attitude to what we're doing. And that's really working, actually. So some of the partnerships we've had, front of shirt sponsor, My Guava, fintech, great guys to work with, but again, they're a disruptor in their field, and that's what we're trying to do with the brands we're partnering with, is work with those brands where actually the brand alignment is there, because we feel like we're both sort of challenger brands, but actually how can we then drive value from that relationship with them? How can we be flexible with them? How can we create that value back for them as a partner? And I think that's really important. Partnerships is incredibly competitive marketplace for any club at the moment. So actually creating that value for our partners is super important. So we launched a co-branded debit card with them. But what we don't do as a partner is sit there and go, well, actually, let's get the contract out and go, well, this is, you get 2 social posts, that's all we're going to give you. We've started from a perspective of how can we help you with your business challenges? How can we help deliver that value? And what does that look like? So, the content piece we created for them to launch that was created by the club. The idea came from the club, but we worked with them on that and kind of worked with them in a collaborative way, and then really push that. And we've seen the highest signups they've had for that co-branded debit products across all of their clubs. So I won't name the other clubs they work with, but we've done really well in that, because we've had that collaborative attitude to the start. And that's what we're trying to bring into, for all the partnerships we do, all the relationships we have, whether it's a licensing relationship, partnership, or, whatever we're doing. So that's kind of helped us. We've had a really good year in terms of signing partners and bringing them in. And now the challenge for us obviously is renewals and keeping those partnerships to be long-term renewals. We're in a good space. Revenue is up from where we were probably, a couple of years ago when I came in, but we want to keep driving that, and we want to find new ways, as I say, to kind of drive revenue, new revenue streams, but always going back to actually what is the benefit to the fans from that. So we're in a good spot. We've got a lot more work to do, but I feel like we've got a good platform to kind of kick on from now. And that aligned with, I suppose, our sort of on-pitch philosophy, which is to bring in youth, give them a chance, and kind of push on it as a team, and really try and strive for the Premier League over the next 5 years. It's a very challenging league to get out of. A lot of clubs with much bigger budgets than us, but we think that if we can align the on-pitch and the off-pitch in that way and be progressive, be innovative, then we've got a really good kind of opportunity there.
Brilliant. So for a university student, someone who, everyone wants to work on football, right? It's such a fantastic industry. For that individual who maybe wants to work in the commercial department of a club, what advice would you give to them in terms of, landing that first role?
I think it's a really tough one. I think it's a really competitive marketplace for anyone coming out of university or school now and looking to get into, sports is always really difficult to get into at any point, probably now even more so. I think it's probably more about, a lot of what our industry is built on relationships, right? So, we go back to partnerships and licensing. It's about having a relationship where you can say to people, this is the value we can drive back to you. And I think if you come at it from that sort of perspective as a student, it's about those relationships you can build. So just reach out to people at clubs. I think if you can show a bit of forward thinking, and if you can show that you're maybe going to stand out from the crowd a little bit, that's the type of attitude you want. We've taken on people, and I've recruited people that maybe don't have quite the right experience, but their attitude's right. I think you can teach a lot of things once you're into a role. You can pick up a lot of experience, and you can pick up a lot of skills when you're in a role, but only really if your attitude's right. If your attitude's positive, if you don't come into things as being quite down and negative around things. If you come in and have that positive attitude and want to learn, that's an incredible trait to have, and that's really easy for people like me to work with. And that's really all I ever ask of our staff, really, is to be positive, to be kind of a bit forward thinking, to try and anticipate things. None of us are always going to get the answers right. But if you try and come with a positive attitude and say, well, actually, look, can I help you in this area? Or this is my opinion. If you come with an opinion, 99% of the time I say to the guys that I manage, you're probably going to be right. They're at the coalface of doing the work all the time. So I think if you can come in from that attitude, if you've got no experience, that's fine. Just come with a different perspective and try and get that experience. I think once you're in the door somewhere and people can see what you can do, then generally things tend to come off the back of that. We've run internships with UCFB. I know you're obviously familiar with, but a lot of those interns then go on to have jobs with us, because actually once they're in and we see that we work with them, we can see the value they bring and the attitude they've got is positive, and then they've got some experience and we can mould that. So I suppose hard to give any sort of definitive advice, but I would just say just try and really kind of reach out to the clubs, know what makes you different to someone else, but really just try and come with that positive attitude and be proactive in what you're doing, and then that generally kind of comes across quite well.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously we was just talking about interns and stuff, and I think you touched upon it. So if an intern's in that first role at a club, for you then having a positive attitude, that's how they can, stand out. That's what's going to make them impress you when they're coming into your department?
Yeah, I think it's, like we talked about it before, but like proactivity, right? So, you don't know what you don't know, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you ask the question and say, look, what more could I be doing? Or even come with a perspective and say, look, I'm interested in X, Y, and Z, or I have a perspective on this. I think that can be really, really impressive and really engaging for us when you're working with people. Um, a lot of the most junior staff I've worked with will be a completely different generation to me, but they're bringing really good new ideas, and I've got a really good perspective that I want to tap into. Sometimes I might not even know what that perspective is, because we are different generations. So again, just coming with an idea of whether it's some people I've worked with before have set up their own podcasts or set up things like that, their own social channels. That's amazing, right? If you've got the entrepreneurial sort of attitude and spirit, and you can show you've built something, I'm not saying everyone has to do that, but those are the examples that tend to sort of stand out in your memory, because you think, well, actually, someone's gone out, they've put themselves out there, they've tried something new, and hopefully succeeded with it, and then they've got that as an example. So, yeah, anything like that. And as I say, it doesn't have to be that that's everything that you do, but I think if you can be proactive and have a clear idea of what you're interested in, ask some questions around things that you maybe aren't interested in, or what you think you should be interested in. It just shows an attitude and an awareness of yourself. Again, I think one of the biggest things probably really for all of us is to be aware of what you don't know. So none of us are perfect, none of us know everything. There will always be black spots in your knowledge. As I say, it could be because of your age, or the age you've grown up in. If you can show an awareness of that, that's just as important. So yeah, coming and asking questions and just wanting to learn. I think, as I say, a positive attitude and someone who wants to be a bit like a sponge and pick things up is always going to come across well. And it just means there's something there for you to work with. And generally, the best people I've worked with that I've managed have had that attitude, then go on and have gone into other bigger roles and do really well for themselves, because they've got that attitude to go out there and learn from the others around them, and go on to be big leaders themselves.
Okay, so final question. If you could describe working in football with one word, what word would you use?
Chaotic. Yeah. I mean, it's the best job in the world. I love it. I love working in football. It's been my passion since I was a little boy. Sadly, nowhere near good enough to be a player. But working in football is fantastic. People are so passionate about the sport. We talked about it earlier. There's the power that football has to do good is unbelievable. The relationships people have with the sport is unbelievable. You just see, one of our rivals, Palace, at the weekend, but when they win the FA Cup, you see the people that are in tears and the joy that brings to people. It's an unbelievable industry to work in. It can be really hard work at times. It's unsociable hours, it's weekends, it's evenings, but then you get the value back from that, and it's really enjoyable to see that difference you make sometimes to sort of to fans' lives and people's lives. So yeah, look, really love working in it. It's hard work, but it's a great industry to work in, and super enjoyable.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Luke. I think chaotic's a very good word. So yeah, cheers, mate.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Awesome.